Every organization has data. Every leader has a title. But the ones who actually move people, they have a story. I'm Dr. Rod Berger, storyteller, author of The Narrative Edge, and your storyteller in residence here at CultureCon. And this is a conversation with one of our culture catalysts. These are leaders who understand that culture isn't built through policies and posters. It's built through the stories that get told in hallways, in meetings, in the quiet moments when no one's performing. The leaders you'll hear from in this series aren't just shaping workplaces, they're shaping narratives. And at their core, they're storytellers, whether they know it yet or not. So here's the question I want us to sit with today. Are you the author of your story, or are you a character in someone else's? Let's find out together. Well, I have to tell you, I just absolutely have loved being, and it's still early in the year, but storyteller in residence for my buddies at CultureCon. And so many of you know them and just the fantastic people that are associated with CultureCon, many of whom I'll be able to see this August at CultureCon in Madison, Wisconsin. By the way, a hidden gem of an American city out there if you
Yes.
have not been. And today I'm going to be spending time with Greta Jackson. She is a CultureCon Catalyst. As if you've been following, I've been interviewing these identified folks that they sort of ooze like this positivity about culture and awareness and people mattering, which I think is just so in need right now, more than ever. And so I'm just the lucky one that gets to spend time with these really incredible professionals and people. So we're going to spend time today with Greta. We're going to learn more about being a dog mom to Kobe and all that she does. But she is a culture and leadership strategist and employee engagement and culture enrichment director at Tegria. Greta, so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you too, Rod. Thank you for having me today.
You are more than welcome. It's such an honor to spend time with you. And like I said off air, I've just heard so many positive things about you. Tell me, I know in your background that education is near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
And you are a former middle school principal and English teacher.
Yes.
Glutton for punishment, some might say, for those that have, right? Tell me about the origins of education for you and when you knew that that was a path, because I think it's a fantastic sort of background to provide the runway that you're on now in helping organizations understand the power of culture within what they're trying to accomplish on the consumer or solution side.
Yeah, absolutely. Shin, it was so funny because when a couple of years back, my mom found this box and it had like stuff from third grade, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it said teacher. And I was like, no way that
It
back in
did.
third grade, I said I wanted to be a teacher. And I fought it for so long. And then I went to education. I kind of took a different route. I started as a sub because I wanted to know what level did I want to teach. I was coming out of retail work at that time, and I tried elementary, and I was like, oh no, they're great, but they're not for me. And then I went to middle, and I was like, okay, maybe. And then high school, I went to high school, and I just fell in love with, I call them big toddlers, the big toddlers um, of the world. And so I just fell in love with them, and I said, okay, well, I know I don't want to do science because I'm afraid of things like snakes and lizards. After studying biology, I was like sitting there totally scared. So I said, I'll use my background in English. And so that just shaped me as a person to be able to talk to kids and talk about why do we have these authors and what was the story behind their life is how I taught it in American Lit. We read the stories, but I wanted them to understand like why, what was in
Like
their
the
life.
origin story of that
Yeah, what's the
writer.
origin
Yeah.
of that story? And so that became the thing that I got known for was like, if you have Miss Jackson, she's going to tell you all about this person's life, and you're going to be fascinated by their life, And so I taught for about 15 years. And then I moved into educational leadership work. And storytelling is the same thing there too. We started talking about data and kids, and I realized that teachers were just like, oh, that's just a number. So I said, we need to fill out what's the story behind the number? How many kids are tied to this number? And so I put the kids' pictures on the wall and said, now go pick one of these children because they're in this data section, and let's find out why they're there, what's happening to them. So it's the story, the face behind that particular number.
Yeah.
And so that's how we were able to make huge gains because then it got really tied to someone and something and what their life was like and what they were encountering and how could we support
Like a
that
big
whole
brother,
person.
big sister kind of a program.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so from that, I moved from being a principal, did that for a couple of years. And I said, you know what? I am a little bit extra crispy, running a school with kids makes you extra crispy sometimes. So I decided I wanted to go into something different, and I started training. And I trained with a local hospital here as a epic trainer, and I did that for a few years. And my boss said, "Hey, I think you should be an analyst," which is a really different change from where I had been. Right, teaching people, educating people, looking at numbers, supporting people, to go be an analyst. And I realized that's not my calling. I'm definitely people driven. I definitely want to talk to people and teach people. Sitting behind a computer was just not my thing. So I left there and I moved into what is now Tegria. They're one of their legacy brands as a recruiter. So I got to tell stories all the time.
All the
You
time.
know, all the time. Like, benefits was not me running down what we had, but like, how do I use the benefits? What's my
Mm.
story with the benefits to make it more real to the candidate experience? And from there, I moved into the director role. And there, I really got to connect with people all across the organization. I knew so many people from recruiting teams. They were like, "Oh my God, I know Greta," and so, "Oh my gosh, you're in one of our meetings." It's like, "Yeah, I'm here to listen, so I know what the next person should be." But then to be the director of connecting people in a 100% remote environment was a completely different challenge because we don't meet in person. We instead have to connect over Teams, and that was totally different from pulling these 5 companies under this one umbrella that had very different experiences with remote work.
What did you learn about yourself in that new environment?
That a screen does not stop you from connecting to people. When I started, I was like, "There's a screen, there's no, like,
No
tactile
depth.
experience where I
Yeah.
can walk up to someone and chat and have a conversation." I had to be super intentional when I reached out to someone to check on them. "What's going on? How have you been? I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't been around in any of your meetings because I'm not doing that role anymore. How are the kids?" Like, remembering everybody and being more intentional about connecting. It's not just a Teams message. You can still pick up the phone, except for this time we're calling on a screen for Teams.
Now you said at the beginning, you were talking about education, that you fought it. Tell me more about fighting education.
Well, I just felt like I really wanna go work with kids, like, kids are they're a parent's world, and what do I with kids gonna do with kids? But I wanted to change in pace, and I wanted to really make a difference in some way, and doing retail work was not making the difference, I didn't feel like. But it also taught me a lot about connecting with people, so I had to do that in education, is just building that connection point, really listening and learning about people. It taught me so much in connecting with kids because kids have so much to say, and sometimes we're too busy being adults to listen. And so listening to them because they have really good ideas, and they see the world completely different than what we see it. And so I like to listen to them and say, "Well, tell me more. Why did you think that way? Or how'd you get to be that way? What made you say that?" Or when I taught advanced placement literature, I would tell the kids, like, "You cannot, I hear what you're saying, but tell me how you came to that." "Well, I heard my mom say it." "Okay, well, but I want to hear what you have to say." Like you see in high school, kids start to,
It's like developing your voice.
yes, what's your voice? Why do you think that? What proof do you have behind that other than "I think that?" As to say with confidence, not that I think I know this. You know this, and this is why you know this.
What I think is fascinating about people in the culture sort of space is that it's the one discipline, very broadly speaking, where it actually, this is me speaking, I think that it is so much more than sort of book smarts through university or whatever our background from an educational perspective, and so much more in the art of interpersonal relationships and reading a room and being able to take the temperature. And most importantly, maybe, is understanding your impact on the temperature in the room. Right. So not
Yeah.
just evaluating as you might be doing if you were an analyst, to your point where you're like, well, I don't know about analyzing from this perspective because I need that sort of that
Mhm.
need to bounce back and forth with human beings in the way in which I think about the world. Do you find that that's something that you've refined over time in your work at the level that you've achieved thus far in your career when you think about sort of the skill sets needed? Because I think these skills are going to be the irony is I think that we're going to do an about face and say, you know how we sort of pushed this stuff to the side, sadly, in so many different environments? I think we need
Yeah,
it. We need it
yeah.
really badly because we have workforces that are terrified they're going to just lose their jobs due to AI, or they're going to be so unrecognizable, they're not going to know if they have the value or the skill set to contribute to that new job within those organizations.
So I think it's so true about the temperature. Like, I really believe that there's a climate and a culture. They're two separate pieces,
Mm.
but they work together. So climate is the temperature of the organization. What's the mood? What's the weather? And so you have to be really tapped into that climate to really understand what's happening in your culture. So building those interpersonal relationships, I believe in being curious and asking a lot of questions. And a lot of my friends and family say that's all she does is ask questions. But I'm just trying to listen and understand what's happening because I say I learned so much more from asking a question. With Tegria, we do a question, and I've learned a lot about people this way. Is on Fridays we do something called Fun Fact Friday. This is a question organizationally wide, that everybody could answer on teams. And when they do that, I've just learned that people have lived not far from each other. I've watched people go and say, "Oh my gosh, I missed a carnival." And one person say, "I'm going. Oh, I wish I could get a hot dog. Where do you don't live 5 minutes from me? I'm going to drop the hot dog off." They're building that connection as well by having these conversations. And so I think you have to be curious. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have to listen a lot more than you speak. So if you listen and then you start to know who people are, which people have kids, what people have dogs, do they, like what's their life like? Are they moving across the country? That's going to show up in your climate every time. If people of the organization are struggling with what's happening in the world, the temperature outside in the world could affect your climate inside of your organization. So to me, that curiosity piece, that listening piece, and then it's like paying attention to the hum of an organization. I know that
The
sounds weird,
hum.
but
No, I like
yes.
that. Because I love the concept of rhythm, like, when I'm working or I'm writing or I'm trying to tell a story, in my
Mhm.
mind, it's very rhythmic. So the
Mhm. Yes.
hum, I get. It's like, what decibel are we vibrating at here, right? Isn't
Yes.
it? It's the unsaid and the impact of the unsaid, potentially.
Yes. Yes. And the way people show up to work, I mean, that hum, even in a remote environment, is very noticeable. You just have to listen for it. So to me, it's when I used to take that think time, I would just be reviewing conversations I've had and just getting quiet and listening to the hum of the organization and then being able to say, you know what? I hear a little extra vibration from this particular team over here. So let me go visit them and just check in on people and say, "Can I just sit in on your meeting? I just wanna listen," you know? And then I was like, "Oh, I could start to pick up, oh, this is why I hear that extra vibration
And
over
can't
here
you be more
because."
proactive in your role as well? Like, in essence, I'll say to diagnose, but I do not mean from a clinical perspective, but
Right.
in essence, to proactively diagnose that, hey, we may be having an issue around this one initiative, or whatever is going on, as opposed to being just reactive, which I think a lot of people believe
Yes.
leadership teams are. It's just, oh, something happened, we need to squash this right now. And it's like, yeah, but what if we were thinking proactively? We might have done something differently, or
Yes.
put out an initiative, rolled it out in a more proactive and thoughtful manner, right?
Yes. Yes, and also, like, providing that quietness to be able to listen to what's the next initiative that we're working on, and then I start to think about how will this show up for everybody starting typically people say I'm going to push it out to my managers and they're going to push it down to individual contributors, but I like to think in the reverse. As an individual contributor, how am I going to connect to this message and what's coming, what the new initiative is, and then we could coach middle managers on how to share that information that it's going to really connect with individual contributor because that's what I often hear a lot is that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, because couldn't you say that, I mean, again, my words, not yours, but in that sort of the former, it's, if we're just gonna push it down in that fashion, are we not inherently saying we're sort of devaluing that message already out of the gate? As if to say, whoever we've handed this to, we believe has the training or, like, the ability to
Yeah.
comprehend the magnitude of what needs to be shared? I mean, the risk is you're playing just a game of telephone, right? I'll date myself. It's like the
Yes.
old put the soup can up to
Yes.
the ear, right? And you go,
Yes.
"Well, why didn't that work?" "Well, I don't know, maybe we didn't protect the message and or cultivate it from the ground up." "Oh, really? You think that could help?" "Yeah, maybe."
Yes, maybe. Yes. Yes, that would have helped a lot. And also, like, I believe in the power of when you're going to share something with managers and they have to cascade it down, what's the proper preparation? Like, I believe in the power of job alikes where you pull people in the same role together and they're gonna have a conversation and they're gonna actually practice. Because so many times managers are going a mile a minute and they feel like they're the only one on the island, like, "Nobody on my team got this message, but I'm gonna share it out anyway." But when you put them all in the room together, like, "Wait a minute, you your team is not listening to this, or your team didn't get this message?" Like, but your team always does amazing things. And then the exchange of ideas. But then there's that practice like, I need everybody to be in the room, uninterested, and then let's hear the message from the manager and say back like, and you didn't really clearly articulate this part, or you just brushed over this, and that was really important for me to hear. That practice power, as I like to call it, is key because you're asking them to set themselves up in the frame of the members of their team and to have a conversation with each other and then think about that conversation you're about to have with your team members in order to get everybody together.
Greta, how has this concept, which I never liked from the outset, this whole notion of soft skills, right? It's like, no, I think these are core skills.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I'm thinking that we're gonna hire people that we actually get along with, and that's gonna be demonstrated through the soft skills, as you call them, right? Or as
Yeah.
right, those folks out there. So how has that changed across your career, and how have you learned to either sidle up next to it so that you don't let it out of your sight, this notion of something that if it's a soft skill, then it's kind of a throwaway, right? Like, it's nice to have, but we don't need
Right.
it, is really what the underlying message there is. So
Right.
how have you understood that over time in your career, and how have you then either embraced it and or sort of challenged it for yourself in real time so that it wasn't something that you just sort of pushed away as if to say, I'm repressing this because it's not, I guess, culturally acceptable in a corporate environment?
So when I started out in education, one of the things I like to do used to do with my kids was like their desk was their office. And it's like, this
I
is your
love that.
office. And I'm the person calling you to say, we have this thing due, how you're going to manage all of this. How do you manage your time? And so I started teaching soft skills to kids right then in that moment. They used to have to sit in quads and they would be like, Jackson, I really don't like her. I don't want to sit next to her. And I'm like, look, it's 15 days. This is your coworker. You didn't get to pick your coworker. You won't often get to pick your coworkers. You guys need to work as a team. And I tried to build this team environment, and you would see that start to happen. I would get new students all the time, and they'd be like, "Hey, let me tell you something. How we work in here? We're gonna be nice to everybody. We have to sit next to each other for 15
Yeah,
days. She's
listen
gonna
here,
move."
Miss Jackson. We're not talking to
Yeah,
Janet. We're talking to Miss Greta.
they're like, and so that became like such a big thing for soft skills, like to be able to communicate with each other and you're not going to talk down to one another. And if they don't understand, you need to ask a question. You just can't sit there and say, okay, well, they told me something, but I really don't get it. Like, that's just not enough. And I moved up that same skill into AP where we would talk about books, but I'm like, here's a pizza, here's a bowl of popcorn, here is, snacks in the break room. Have a conversation about the book like you're in the break room, in order to start to build that ability to have a conversation. Because really, the connecting part is to me the most important part of a soft skill, right? Like, how do you connect with other people? Because then the learning takes place in the other person, and then you're curious and you're able to work and collaborate with people because you've built a connection with people, that budding relationship. But as I've grown through my career, I've seen the shift in soft skills. More people, like you say, "Oh, it's a soft skill." I mean, no big deal, right? It's fine. Like I just want to get the job done. The soft skill is how you get the job done. It is the thing. It's not a nice to have. It is the value add to me, to any person now, is what I say. That's the value that you're going to bring to an organization, that you have those soft skills. So when I'm talking to people and I feel like they're not making eye contact, they're not being collaborative, I'm not afraid to say, I think we need to time out on this for a second. What's happening? Because you're not even making eye contact. You're brushing this off as it's not important. If it's not a good time, we should reschedule. If this is not how we want to work, let's redefine how we're going to work together moving forward. I just call it out right then. I don't
I love
shy
that you do
away.
that because in essence, you're not only are you addressing that in the moment, but you're also modeling it for colleagues. Because I think I don't know what happened, but our ability to have, I'll say like, difficult conversations, or we've lost that ability in a large measure, I think. And so we try to avoid at all cost. And it's like,
Yes.
water does run downstream, right? If we know that, then maybe we need to understand the impact of that water on the riverbed,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we just have to. And so some of those skills, we can't just live in an honorable mention kind of a world in that manner, right? We need to talk through
Yes.
these things so we can. And the funny thing is I think when people tap into that, they realize, wow, I have more agency and I actually
Yes.
want to be more collaborative. So it's not even a thing about sort of creating either or, it's more about an
Yes.
and.
Yes. And I would say, when you're able to have to call something out or to have an honest conversation, you think about how much that improves feedback. Because that's the thing I also hear is I don't get good feedback from my manager. I don't think my manager even knows what I do. Feedback is more than that was good. That was
Or
great.
feedback at all, right?
Right out. Right, right. And so that conversation about how we're working together as a team, or I'm not seeing you show up in the manner that I'm used to seeing you show up. What's changed? What's different? Welcome to our team. This is how we show up. We are we provide honest feedback. We do what we say we're going to do. We're going to deliver as a team. That's where your values start to show up when you can call that information, call it out when people aren't living the values. Values are not a poster on the wall, as we all know. They don't just show up when, hey, we see them at the beginning of a meeting, but it's how do we live them in every single way, and how do we show other people that we live them? When I do onboarding, that's one of the things I do. I want to know from the new folks what value resonates with you the most and why. Like, I stop and have a conversation about that because I want them to be living the values. And they're new, so they don't see the values, but some value resonated with them from our organization. And then we talk about what it looks like to live those values, just examples, so that they know what it's like to carry the value every day.
Let's talk about let's have a difficult conversation, Greta.
Okay.
Let's talk about blind spots because I think individuals have them, right? I think we'd be foolish to say that organizations don't have them because, of course, they do, even in the best of, I think, environments. So I'd like to talk about sort of biases or blind spots, I should say, with regards to your contemporaries around the country and thinking about AI and skill sets that you and your colleagues maybe need to acquire or should be pursuing so that inadvertently we're not making sort of these cultural mistakes or sort of digging potholes that we don't know we're really digging because we are entering a world and we have that is terribly different, right? I mean, I'm at the soccer field and talking to a dad who says, just a couple of months ago, AI, and he kind of sloughed it off, and then he's saying to me, they just wiped out a department right underneath me. And oh, by the way, now Gemini is being used in every meeting to basically capture every nuance and exchange. And he says to me, I know why they're doing it, right? And it doesn't take a genius to kind of figure out just what are they doing maybe with that data. That's just one example of many that I think a lot of us have had. And so I would think that if there's ever a group that we're sort of counting on to help us through this, this transition or whatever people want to call it, it's going to be those cultural leaders that can ask maybe tough questions and or the question that is hiding behind the experience in the LinkedIn profile that is no longer there to protect us. So I'm just curious as to how you're thinking about it, what your contemporaries, your colleagues across the country, when you're at conferences and these sorts of things, what they're discussing so that I don't know, maybe you'll make me and the audience feel a little bit better about where we're going and how people are trying to address something that is, maybe it's we don't have an answer for, which is fine. It's just, are we open enough to acknowledge the mistakes potentially that we're going to make along this sort of muddy path?
So I think that's the key. You have to be open first off, because AI is here. It's not like I'm just going to shut the door and it won't show up at my doorstep. It's here. It's in the doorstep. It's in the offices. A lot of teams use it, and so when you talk about how whole teams will disappear because the connection to AI, I think we have to first take a step back and realize that when a whole team disappears, somebody lost their best friend. Somebody lost
Good
their best
point.
friend at work. Somebody lost someone they connect to at work. And so I say my job is not to require you to make a connection, but to provide the environment for you to make the connection to someone else, either through employee resource groups, affinity groups, Teams channels. Now, with AI being here, I think of it in so many different ways. One, sometimes the thought partner, I'm a department of one. So I need sometimes outside of my colleagues I've been at conferences, because I can't call them all throughout the day, like, you got a minute to talk about this. Like I have to run, I talk it through with AI, but a lot of it's me just talking it through and I hear myself and I'm like, oh yeah, that was the
So
answer.
you talk it through with AI.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so yeah, I want to make sure I didn't just run over that, right? So as part of a thought partner exercise, you're sort of having this conversation with AI. And is
Yes.
the objective to either sort of verbalize in somewhere to get it out, to organize your thoughts, and or is it to, I guess, see it in writing or to hear it parroted back to? I mean, help me understand that loop and how that's impacting you positively.
Yeah. So typically what I do is I set up a project, right? And I tell AI that you are a culture thought leader, because I want to make
Yeah.
sure it knows who it is, right? You're a culture thought leader, and I want you to challenge some of the thoughts that I have, but also assure the ones that you feel might be strong. So then one, by me talking like it's on my phone, it's on my computer too, but I have it on my phone so I can press the microphone part and
Yeah.
just talk to it. Like having a conversation out loud. I'm not typing all this. I'm talking directly to it as a conversation. So it does several things. One, it's going to capture my conversation for me to go back and read later, right? All the things that I've said out loud in conversation that I may miss in writing, because we all know we might get hung up on a word. Like, how do
Mm.
I spell that? We've missed the thought, right? Like, what was that again? What was the thought I was starting? So I have it out in the conversation. But when it asks me about questions, because I wanted to ask me questions, not tell me you're wrong in this thinking. But what about this? Or why do you say this? It gives me to think a little bit more and think through to the end of something. If I'm doing backwards design on something I want to launch, then I use AI to say, like, here's what I want to get to, and here's where I am. And so now I need to merge everything in the middle, and here's how I think I should do that. Is there anything that I'm missing that I haven't thought of? Is it more like Swiss cheese or is it a whole slice of cheddar? Is what I like to think of it as, that when I'm putting a whole idea together. So I really use it as a thought partner.
I love that approach. I'm curious in your prompting or if you're building a skill. It sounds like you're using Claude if you're putting it from a project perspective, maybe.
Yes.
Are you I would be so curious in that exchange if part of the sort of the algorithm or what you've set forth already within that skill or within that project is a set of instructions that I guess asks you questions relative to context, right? So you put in problem A or here's what's going on, that if you're getting questions that help you focus and reflect on how was this done previously, right?
Yes.
How have the conditions changed?
Mhm.
What are the blind spots potentially? And or maybe what's yeah, I mean, I just feel like you could go down this spider web of contextual sort of variables that
Yes.
would really enhance your ability in the moment to read the situation with that employee or colleague. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's very fair because it really is once you set up those instructions and you tune it, like you've got to work to make sure it's tuned. Like I used to start off with a set of instructions and I never had in there, be honest, not
Right.
just pare it back. I want you to be an honest thought partner.
Yeah. Identify my blind spot. Like, what am I
What are
missing?
my blind spots that when I talk about culture, and I'm always like not going to use the organizational's name. I'm not going to use people's names, anything like that. But
Yeah.
I am going to talk about it in a situation. And so, what are my blind spots? What's really working for what I say? What I've said. What have I said that seems to be really working? Because sometimes I'll read that back and I'm like, do I really think that's working? Like, I need to take a moment to make sure, you know, what evidence do I have that's supporting that? Or am I just, I don't want to say tooting my own horn, but am I giving it more credit than what it actually is happening at that moment? And the same thing when you think about with people, if AI is giving notes, you could take those notes and say, after you take out the person's name and say, this is a conversation I had with someone today. And this is my general feeling about where we should go moving forward with this team around this project. And I get the general feeling that this is what's happening. Is there anything I'm missing that I didn't catch in this conversation? Is there any questions I should be thinking about as a leader around culture for this team that I haven't thought of already or that I haven't verbalized? And is there any homework, meaning what's the next steps I should be thinking about?
Yeah.
Like any homeworks that I
See,
should
I'm
take away?
curious, Greta. I'm curious, sort of going down this thread. Like, one thing I would be curious to do would be to take a series of conversations, transcripts that you've had with employees, and not ask maybe a direct question about that exchange, but to have, let's say, Claude analyze your speech patterns.
Mhm.
Like,
It's really good.
right, analyzing how you come across. And the reason I say that is because like I wanted to understand my voice in my writing and the different things for magazines and things that I've written. And just because I wanted to understand sort of the rhythm. I'm not a musician, but I think rhythmically when I write. And I had that pulled together and I wanted to see like an analysis of
Mhm.
where can I push my writing? So it wasn't about the subject or the interview guest or any of that or the topic. It was purely about my pattern. And
Okay.
I that really helped me understand. I don't know, some of it is empowering in one sense, right? And
Yes.
then some of it I think is revealing. And if you truly want to grow,
Yes.
I think you can grow at a faster clip because you can't just push it away because, oh, you've got to run to this, you got to run to that. It's like, no, now
Yes.
we have some data here that says, oh, look, Rod, this is how you typically start off a conversation or an interview. The transcripts seem to do this. Here's the energy of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's powerful. And I think for leaders, I've heard sort of a version of that from a leader that I know. And it was purely because she wanted to understand how she was coming across, right?
That's
She'd had
good.
a bunch of
Mhm.
executive coaching and she just kind of wanted to get in there, was ready to, and say, I'm wondering if it's not what I'm saying, maybe it's how I'm saying it and the sequence by which I'm putting it out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's such a powerful way to use AI is how are you saying something and how is it perceived? Because that's a whole different thing, as we're sitting here, I'm thinking on the fly. If I said to AI as part of my instructions, "You're a member of my team, and here is what I'm about to say. Tell me how it lands on you as a member of the team. Tell me what holes that you're not connecting to. How do I sound when I say this? Am I like we say with the rhythm, like am I speaking in such a way that conveys the point and that I truly care about these people that
Yeah.
are on my team? You know, is that coming across? And if it says no or it gives those like and provide practical tips on how to improve, because sometimes, let's be honest, AI will say, "You sound great. That was amazing." But we haven't given it the instructions to say, provide direct and honest feedback, or this is what I want to the value I want coming out of this conversation. Do I achieve that?
Yeah.
And what else do I need to do to make sure that comes across clearly and strongly to the person? When I say strongly, I don't mean like aggressively. I mean that it's super clear and there's no denying that's what I want to come across and they get it when they walk away.
Yeah. More about clarity.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm so glad to hear that, and you don't represent everybody in the culture space, but I just love hearing that you are actively pushing yourself in a way that says you're trying to understand yourself in a world that is, I mean, it's just every day is exploding with new
Yes.
revelations that it's going faster than we can process, right? And so there will
Yes.
be trickle down to that there will be impacts. You're going to
Yes.
have people that work on your teams that have kids that are potentially thinking about going to college and they're going, well, now how does this change what I want to
Yes.
pursue or if I want to pursue it? And those are real concerns and impact someone's ability to work in the moment, right? Because we're not
Yes.
robots, but we have to understand our relationship, I guess, to them, broadly speaking, right?
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times I think people can see AI as like I don't want to say enemy, as like someone that's challenging where they are, something that's taking away, and it really is an enhancement. And a lot of times we hear the enhancements around productivity, the task that takes things off your plate, but it can also be a great thought partner
Oh,
as a leader
absolutely.
and not be something that is taking away something off your plate, but can work alongside you.
Yeah, and to even to input in sort of change agents or initiatives of the past
Yes.
as you're developing. I mean, look, in sales, you talk about like brand personas or your buyer persona. You know what? You can take that same sort of thought process to
Yes.
evaluate and analyze how things have rolled out in the past.
Yes. And
Because
what
if you,
we do differently.
that's right. How could we have improved this, or where were we? Excuse me, missing the mark?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And then if we were missing the mark, how do we not miss that mark anymore?
that's right.
What do we need to do to not miss that mark anymore? And then how do we like evaluate for ourselves? Like if AI is going to tell you these things, then have it help you draft some type of rubric or I say this is education, rubric or
Yeah,
checklist
absolutely.
or a guide that you can use for yourself. Oftentimes too, I think when you have think time, because a lot of times we don't do that, our think time's happening in the car, it's happening between going to pick up the kids, on the walk with the dog. But you can use AI to say, like, here's my list today, and I do need to think about these things. And here's what I think about them currently. And it gives you a chance to put all the information there. You just circle back to that conversation later. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. You just go back and then you continue the thought process and you don't forget anything that you've already said.
Yeah, you can think differently. I mean, it's like I've been using granola, and which is a fantastic, if people don't know, but it's basically a note taker of sorts when you're on calls. But the beauty of it is that you can go in and in like 2 seconds you can create a template so that if you're having a conversation of whoever, whatever sort of buckets you have, and when you're done, it'll analyze it based on what you have said. Like in essence, I want to see associations. How many,
Yes.
whatever it is, and it's just a quick snapshot that says I was either on my game today, or I
Yes.
missed an opportunity, or how did I not? I found that incredibly empowering.
Yes, for sure. And I have done that with, Claude and when I was using ChatGPT for a while. But I would say, you know, at the end of a month, tell me about what the perception of me as a leader is, as a thought leader, as a culture specialist. What should I be thinking about for myself based on what you know about me? And it's very interesting because it shifts. You start to see the shifts. If you do the end of every month, you start to see like, oh, you started here and now you're here. So I might have had really basic on the top, like very top level thoughts. And over the course of that month, I've progressed. And over time, it's really deeper thoughts. And I'm starting at a deeper level and not up here. I'm going to the bottom of the iceberg and working my way back up
Back
for
up.
starting at the top of the iceberg and never getting to the bottom.
Well, it is clear why our buddies at CultureCon, Zach and Nick, named you a catalyst, a culture catalyst, Greta. You are forward thinking in a way that I just find contagious. It's awesome because I want to have that. I want to know, I want to be active in it so that it's something that I can embrace. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can learn from. And it's really powerful to be in your role in modeling that for other people. And what I love about what you're saying, what you've said today, is it's not about sort of the others in the room, whether that's digital, remote, or in person, but it's really what I hear from you. It's so much more about you in
Mhm.
the regards of your impact, how you could be reading a room differently, a situation. And that to me says a lot about your character and the way in which you think about the impact that you want to have that goes all the way back to uh,
Yes.
in middle and high school. Greta, we didn't get to talk about Kobe, but you got to let me know, what kind of dog is Kobe?
Kobe's a Shih Tzu. He's a black and
Okay.
white Shih Tzu. He's very precocious, so he always has a lot to say, and he likes to attend meetings.
He does.
Yeah, yeah, when he hears the teams come on, he comes running from
But he
wherever
didn't
he
come to
is.
our meeting today. This is just
He's
so
away. I took
okay,
him to
Kobe.
have a play date today with his best friend Teddy
Oh
at my
my
mom's house.
goodness.
He's having a play date because I knew he would want to be here, and I don't think he wanted to see me hold a 22-pound Shih Tzu this entire meeting.
22 oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
he's a big
That's an
guy.
important detail.
He's a big guy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, mine is what, I don't know, like 10 pounds, so we're very different.
And what kind of dog do you have?
Cavapouchon, a genetically engineered dog that doesn't shed.
That's amazing.
That looks like a teddy bear.
That's my mom's dog. She has a Bishapoo, so
Okay.
also doesn't shed,
Yeah.
but he looks like a teddy bear, and that's why his name is Teddy.
The dogs are really the smart ones in this
They're
equation.
the
We're
best.
just coming to the
Yes.
realization of it all. Well, Greta Jackson, what a pleasure to spend
Oh,
time with you
thank you.
today. You can connect with Greta either through CultureCon or through her LinkedIn. She is the Employee Engagement and Culture Enrichment Director at Tegria. Greta, what a pleasure. Really enjoyed this. Once again, this is the CultureCon Catalyst podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger. Every organization has data. Every leader has a title. But the ones who actually move people, they have a story. I'm Dr. Rod Berger, storyteller, author of The Narrative Edge, and your storyteller in residence here at CultureCon. And this is a conversation with one of our culture catalysts. These are leaders who understand that culture isn't built through policies and posters. It's built through the stories that get told in hallways, in meetings, in the quiet moments when no one's performing. The leaders you'll hear from in this series aren't just shaping workplaces, they're shaping narratives. And at their core, they're storytellers, whether they know it yet or not. So here's the question I want us to sit with today. Are you the author of your story, or are you a character in someone else's? Let's find out together.